Welcome to the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up for the week of 16 February 2020. D-list celebrities will call you for money. RSA was sold for $2.1 billion. IBM pulled out of RSA due to fear of COVID-19. Citrix hacks. All this and more on Security Weekly News Wrap-Up.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV courses live and on demand, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Team subscriptions include Pro Portal, so managers have full control over your team's training schedule. Go to itpro.tv/hack-naked and use the code HN30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the countless ways our critical systems can be put in jeopardy. Ransomware attacks, misconfiguration, user error, and malicious threat actors, to name a few. As IT infrastructures continue to grow and diversify, how do you ensure stable security? Core Security, a help systems company, provides an analytics-driven, layered approach to security with a portfolio that enables both proactive and reactive responses. With Core Security, you can reduce risk by limiting access, detect upcoming and active threats, test for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitor data for actionable insights. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/core security.
Hi, I'm Doug White. I'm your host, and welcome to the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up show for this week. I'm still hoarse from doing Security Weekly last night from all the smoking, drinking, and talking about security that we did. So if you missed that show, you might want to go back and watch it, because anytime I'm on it, of course, it's legendary anyway. First, let's wrap up all the show topics for this week. On Application Security Weekly number 96, Mike, John, and Matt had an interview with Doug DePerry of Datadog and Signal Sciences. On Business Security Weekly number 162, Matt and Michael had an interview with David Sherry and Tara Schaffler from Princeton University. That interview, they were talking about making security programmatic and cultural, and previewed their upcoming talk at InfoSec World in Orlando. So it's something that you hear about a lot, about making all those things basically a part of the culture, and we all know that, and it's good to hear people getting out there and telling other people in the business world about it. On Enterprise Security Weekly number 173, Matt, Scott, and Josh had an interview with Ben Budge and Lyle Beck of Lighthouse, and the discussion was about ExtraHop. Lighthouse is a customer of ExtraHop, and they were talking about the problems that Lighthouse had experienced that led them to go over to ExtraHop and to use that product, and what the experience was like. If you don't know what ExtraHop is, you probably do, but if you don't, it's basically using machine learning to process all your network interactions and evaluate them. So you see a lot of things like that. You actually heard, we were talking last night on Security Weekly about Elastic, which is also starting to embed that kind of approach into their SIEMs. But ExtraHop's a very interesting product. The second segment on that show had Scott Lyons doing a tech segment about their Capture the Flag at InfoSec World in 2020. He and Josh, and with the company Red Lion, they basically run CTF events all the time now. And they were providing an overview of their CTF in that segment. So if you're interested in playing Capture the Flags, you're interested in running Capture the Flag, developing Capture the Flags, or you're going to be a part of Capture the Flag in Orlando, you probably want to check that segment out to see what they got going on. On the Security Weekly News number 13, Jason Wood provided expert commentary on malware using HTTPS. This is basically in regards to a new trend to use the encrypted channel instead of traditional HTTP or some other unencrypted channel, and which send all the malware payloads in the clear. So by sending those encrypted, it means that you're going to have a lot more difficulty interpreting that, identifying it, and stopping it. So this was a new trend that Jason was talking about. On Security and Compliance Weekly, number 17, Jeff, Matt, Scott, and Josh had an interview with Jeff Recor of Accenture. The topic of that interview was integrated risk management. So, again, a topic that's really growing. We've had a show about it, security compliance, and you're seeing it across the industry as risk management. I've been getting asked about that a lot more lately. By people that call me and say, hey, what does this mean? What should we be doing? So you may want to check that out as well. Finally, on Paul's Security Weekly, number 640 last night, Paul, Doug, Lee, Tyler, and Jeff had a lot of fun, both before the show, during the show, and after the show, drinking, smoking, and talking about security. Everyone is on their way to RSA this weekend, except some of us who had to stay behind. But the first segment was an interview with Mike Nichols, an often guest on Security Weekly, and he was talking about Elastic and in-game merging and getting more and giving a lot of details about the Elastic product. If you haven't seen Elastic, I'll give it a pitch because we use it in a lab that I run. It's a SIM that has a free demo version, which is what we're using in the lab because we don't have much budget. But you can actually really get a lot of SIM stuff out of that. It is open source, which I liked a lot. And, of course, they have all sorts of add-on, bolt-on mods that you can put, and it actually starting to do machine learning with their beats that they put into that are kind of like agents in a way, or plugins maybe is another way to put it. But you should definitely check out that segment if you're looking for a SIM or you're trying to see that, because we had a lot of fun talking with Mike about that product. In the tech segment, which was really cool, I very much enjoyed this segment. Ian Coldwater of Heroku and two cats. So there it looks like just one cat, but there's actually apparently two cats there. It was great to talk to about Kubernetes security. Ian is a specialist in Kubernetes security and container security in general. Ian specializes in hardening and hacking Kubernetes. And so if you're using Dockers or you've looked at Dockers, you've probably also at some point looked at Kubernetes, at least if you followed the sort of path that I took fooling around with that. And as you start to develop more than, when you first have a single Docker, you're okay. Then you add two Dockers or three Dockers, and all of a sudden you're going, how do I manage these things? And, of course, that's where you immediately find the name Kubernetes. Ian went on and gave a bunch of great suggestions and tips for both how things you might need to do as well as things you could read, et cetera, about how to secure your Kubernetes environment. And two cats, come on, what's not to love? Based on all the shows this week, my favorite thread of the week was ICS. ICS stands for Industrial Control Systems, and ICS devices are extremely prevalent around the world. These are long-lived tools. The average planned life for these things was like 25 years. They're expensive. They're typically large-scale systems, and they control almost all of the infrastructure in the entire world. So whether it's gas pipelines, electric grids, power generations, robots, you name it, all of that is considered ICS. It's a very proprietary industry. They have their own cons. I was actually watching some ICS cons the other day. But all that's going on. There were numerous stories then this week on different shows talking about various aspects of ICS threat, which is, I think, really becoming a big deal. One of the stories was out-of-band terminals. So out-of-band terminals can mean anything from these baseboard type operations that you see on servers to literal, like a programmable logic controller that's been built with a bunch of analog controls or digital controls on it. Those are being subjected to ransomware attacks. There were other ransomware attacks on ICS that were being reported this week where they had shut down gas pipelines and other sorts of things like that, because when they lose a system in this, these systems were engineered to basically run with a lot of independence, and they were assumed that they were fairly safe. As we've seen people start adding them to their networks, they've started adding IoT devices into these networks. All of a sudden, there are vectors where you can get to the ICS. There were over 400 ICS vulnerabilities disclosed in 2019, and not to mention that this is a huge target for nation states. If you listened to the show last night, you heard Paul talking about, and we were all talking about, how it may be possible that nation states have used some of the known attacks like Stuxnet as a place to start testing their mechanisms for use later on these big scale systems. So that was my thread of the week. So top news from all the shows then. This was my picks from different shows. Hackers were apparently inside Citrix for 5 months, according to Krebs on Security. Between 2018 and 2019, password spraying was apparently the approach that was used to get into the systems. And, it's kind of like, wow, Citrix is a very, very common platform. Citrix released a letter with some details of the incident and said that the attackers had intermittent access between October 2018 and March of 2019. I presume by intermittent they mean they don't know. And basically that Citrix had corrected this problem subsequently. But Citrix, which is used by many, many, many companies as a basis for running all their servers now, the virtualization of servers. This is another Citrix is. I'll assume you know what Citrix is, but basically they said that social security numbers, tax IDs, you name it, was being extracted from different networks where people were in there. The article went on to report that RE Security or ReSecurity, I don't know, maybe ReSecurity, claimed that it had evidence, the ReSecurity had evidence, that Iranian hackers were responsible and had been in the Citrix network possibly for years. So maybe this was much worse than was revealed. Citrix was responding to all this because of laws in the United States that require them to notify customers when a breach has occurred. At the same time, this week, U.S. President Donald Trump apparently offered a pardon to Julian Assange if he would deny that Russia leaked emails in the 2016 election. This was part of Assange's extradition trial in London this week, where apparently U.S. Congressman Dana Rohrabacher relayed the offer from the president to Julian. And if you're unaware, Julian Assange is currently fighting against extradition to the United States where he's in jail in London. He's under indictment for multiple counts of espionage, which was related to the release of military videos in 2010. I put links to all those stories on the wiki, so if you want to read any of that or see the videos that he got grabbed for releasing, you can. Google removed 500 Chrome extensions from the Webstore which contain malware. The extensions basically injected malicious ads and exfiltrated browsing data to command and control servers off-site. Apparently, the campaign to put these extensions in the Webstore had been operating since at least January 2019, but there was other evidence that the person behind these extensions may have been working this angle since 2017. Jamila Kaya and Duo Security, which is a Cisco division, originally had identified 70 Chrome extensions that had over 1.7 million users, and they notified Google about this malware that was embedded. And Google then went on to find a large number of extensions that actually were based on this same approach. The extensions were granting people access to the clipboard, cookies, exfiltrating data, you name it. Basically, because those extensions had pretty much full-blown access to what you were doing with your browser, they were able to extract all sorts of information and send it up to the command and control server. It's definitely time to check your browser extensions and permissions if you haven't done that lately. It looks like Firefox is going to force the deprecation of TLS 1.0 and 1.1 due to basically what we all know, that they've been insecure for years. Numerous attacks listed in the article have relied on this SSL protocols as their vector, and we have all known this and been talking about this for a long time. But finally, somebody's taken action. Firefox 74, which is due out in March, will offer TLS 1.2 as its minimum version for secure connections. Of course, the user can override this and set it so that it'll allow whatever. And, of course, in the meantime, as you move between these, you may get websites that only allow TLS 1.0 or TLS 1.1. So I presume other browsers will follow suit pretty quickly, or maybe I should say at long last. I'm not sure which is more appropriate. Hackers are actively exploiting a 0 day in WordPress. Theme Rex, which allows for the creation of admin accounts on your WordPress site. Paul did talk about this article on the show last night, and he went on to recommend ensuring that your hosting provider for your WordPress sites monitors for this type of thing and excludes these extensions and plugins from WordPress that have known vulnerabilities automatically. So you may want to check what kind of service level you're getting from your vendor that hosts your WordPress site. Another plugin vulnerability was reported this week in WordPress called Theme Grill Demo Importer, which allows attackers to actually wipe your entire WordPress database to the default database and then log in themselves as an administrator, which means they, of course, can embed whatever they want on your site until you notice it and take it down. This one apparently hit around 200,000 websites. So, get a handle on your WordPress. WordPress, of course, very popular, also very popular target. So it has definitely got vulnerabilities there, and you need to have good mechanisms for dealing with this. Mount Gox Victims. Wow, that's an old story gets new life. Mount Gox, if you remember that, the victims may get some of their Bitcoins back, maybe. Mount Gox was responsible for about 70% of Bitcoin trades when the original hack occurred. And in 2014, Mount Gox had to file for bankruptcy based on this attack. The attack stole, I don't know what the right word is, but about 850,000 Bitcoins, not dollars. 850,000 Bitcoins were actually were lost in that attack. The owner of Mount Gox went to prison. Mount Gox, of course, ended up bankrupt, and court battles then ensued in Japan. And several offers from the Mount Gox controlling, or trustee, I think is what it's called. The trustee of Mount Gox has made several offers to the victims, including one that started at $755 per Bitcoin, which sounds pretty light. These offers were being based on the value of Bitcoin at the time of the loss, not the current price of Bitcoin. The latest offer that just came out this week was $1,300 per Bitcoin, which would represent about 88% of the value of the Bitcoins at the time of the attack. So today, this morning, I looked it up. Bitcoin was selling for about $9,750 per Bitcoin. So probably a lot of frustration on the people who own those Bitcoins if they start thinking about what they're worth right now compared to what they were worth when this attack occurred. And Mount Gox offered them $1,300 US. Now, that's pretty good for the time, but it's certainly not much if you're sitting there today saying, wow, I had a lot more. Dell has completed the sale of RSA to a private equity firm for $2.1 billion. RSA was originally acquired as part of a larger purchase by Dell of the EMC Corporation, which owned RSA at the time. The announcement was made just before, of course, RSA kicks off. Everybody here is packing their bags to fly out to San Francisco next week. But basically, there was a lot of different conjecture about why Dell, I guess, spun this off again. Most people agreed that either Dell needed to reduce their debt profile, or that RSA and Dell had a kind of personality conflict going on, and Dell felt that they would be better off. There was also some conjecture about the fact that Dell is a publicly traded company, which means that RSA, which was originally private, was subject to all sorts of things like Sarbanes-Oxley and all these other kinds of rules. If you are going to be at RSA next week, be sure and drop by the Broadcast Alley. We're going to have Paul and Matt will be there shooting interviews. We have crew there. Most of the hosts of from SecurityWeekly.com are all going to be out there. Unfortunately, I won't. I'm going to say that again, just hint, hint. But I wasn't going to be there. But we got a whole bunch of hosts out there, so feel free to buy somebody a drink or drop by a Broadcast Alley and say hi. At the same time, IBM announced they were withdrawing from the RSA conference over COVID-19. That's what the official name of the coronavirus stuff from Wuhan is. According to this report, about 0.79, so hear that carefully, 0.79, less than 1% of the attendees have withdrawn. Currently, 8 exhibitors have withdrawn from the RSA event. It wasn't clear if they had withdrawn for COVID-19 or because of some other reason. In my opinion, this seems like an overreaction. We have far more threat from flu in the United States than we do from COVID-19. But I bravely ordered Paul and Matt to forge ahead and get out there and attend that conference anyway. After several martinis last night, Paul did say he would eat a gummy bear off the floor at RSA, but I'll wait and see the video of that actually happening. But IBM pulling out at this point just seemed kind of silly to me, but, hey, it's IBM. Who's going to tell them what to do? In December, an article in Nature magazine described a method for creating perfect secrecy in cryptography by using photons. I won't get into all the grim details, but this is a really cool technique that is very heavily documented in this Nature article with all the math, if you like such things, and would allow for basically creating one-time pads for each part of a message or session that's being conducted between these 2 points. So this would effectively meet the criteria for what is called perfect secrecy. They used a Vernam cipher and a manipulation of single photons with some machine learning built into that to create this exchange. So if you're into crypto, you're definitely going to enjoy reading this academic paper. There were some pop news stories about it that had different descriptions, so if you'd rather read it there. And finally, Cameo, which is a service where you can pay, I don't know if I'll say desperate, but you can pay celebrities, D-list celebrities, to send messages to you or to your friends for a party or whatever. Apparently, Cameo's app didn't have very much in the way of security. According to Motherboard, Cameo exposed emails, phone numbers, passwords, credit card numbers, you name it, in the app, not to mention that a script could be run that would scrape the allegedly private videos that you had created by Cameo. Cameo says these problems have all been resolved and everything's back to the way it was supposed to be. But if you sent your friend a sexy greeting from Larry Thomas, famous for playing the soup Nazi on Seinfeld, well, other people may have seen it as well. For only $99 on Cameo, Andy Dick will deliver your message to you and your loved ones and friends. If you have any feedback on the new formats of the news show, be sure and send us a comment. I would love to hear it personally. And that's the news wrap-up for the week of 16 February 2020. I'm Doug White from Roger Williams University. See you next week. Actually, I won't see you next week because everybody's going to be at RSA. So if you're at RSA, drop by and say hi. Otherwise, I'll see you when we come back after RSA. Thanks.